talked the other day about this, about how, in just a little while ago, about how here in Harris County, they're having a hard time getting people to show up to get the vaccination. So much so they put out an emergency alert, which is normally reserved for things like Amber Alerts and those types of things, to let people know, hey, listen, hey, we're open at NRG. Come on down. There's no waiting, no appointment necessary, 16 and older. Just come on down and get your vaccination. It's kind of funny how we went from people standing in line, like I was, to get the vaccination, and to nobody in line at all. No more takers. So if we hit our limit here in the amount of people who are really interested in getting the vaccine. Joining us to talk about it is Todd Furniss, author of The 60% Solution, Rethinking Healthcare. By the way, you can find out more about the book at The 60 spelled out, SIXTY, the60%solutionbook.com. Todd, welcome to the show. What happened to all the demand for vaccinations?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me today, Jimmy. I appreciate you having me on. Well, I think if you kind of take a snapshot of where we are today, let's just look at some of the numbers. We've had over 231 million vaccinations administered already. 82% of all Americans over 65 have already been vaccinated with at least one shot, and 68% have been vaccinated with both shots. So, and essentially what's happened is that most who are in the vulnerable part of our society have been vaccinated, and so you've got a new group that you have to market to. And who are that new group? If you take a look at it, the other issue is that most of the people who have been hospitalized, intubated, or who died from COVID were not just old, they were obese. So 78% who died from COVID or were hospitalized or intubated were obese. So most of the dialogue and most of the marketing initiatives have all been around getting the most vulnerable components of our society addressed without really talking about the issue of obesity. So then you hear about the horror stories about coming from J&J, and they suspended distribution of J&J, even though 7 or 8 people out of 7 million people who are vaccinated have had a problem with blood clots typically. And then you've got young people who haven't been vaccinated. So that young people typically don't get the disease, or if they do get it, they have a mild case of it. So the people who are outstanding are people who are either not hearing the message or who likely are saying, look, my risk is pretty low. I don't want to go through what happened with the J&J guys. And also I've heard that Moderna and Pfizer leave people kind of banged up, or at least there's that possibility. So I think I'll take a pass on it. I think that's what some people are concluding.
Yeah. I think we can add one more thing, too, with the state of Texas, in that we went maskless. We removed all restrictions basically 6 weeks ago, and we've seen no spike as far as cases go. In fact, it's continually ticked down. We're in great shape here. People, I think, have gotten back, for the most part, have gotten pretty much back to normal, and they don't see any great spike. And I think for a lot of people, right or wrong, they think it's over.
Well, and I know you're an open-minded guy, so I know you won't mind that I'm from Dallas as opposed to Houston. But I think you're spot on. I think that's part of the issue is, we've got mixed messages from the administrations, and we are uncertain about what to do. So in the interest of being as cautious as possible, what we do is we do whatever we think is best. And that kind of is very much consistent with the Texan mentality, which is, a little bit on the edge of libertarianism, if you will.
Sure. And I think the other part of it is I think the CDC has not been a friend to itself or to others, in that the message has been so convoluted and has changed so often and seemingly defies what we find is common sense, especially now. Well, we're going to have a discussion about whether or not we should remove the recommendation to wear a mask outdoors. Hell, when's the last time you saw a Texan wearing a mask outdoors?
No, exactly right. And there's a Dr. Rachel Walensky who came out. She's with the CDC, and she said, hey, now people who are fully vaccinated can meet with other people who are fully vaccinated without masks inside. And, in fact, if you're an old person and you have grandkids, you can meet with your grandkids who have no mask, even though they haven't been vaccinated. And it feels like it's a trick question, right? How many variables can you pump into a single sentence? And then the other thing that's happened is they've been inconsistent. So it was 6 feet, you have to be apart. Now it's 3 feet apart. But then I heard a CDC advertisement as recently as yesterday where they were saying, hey, you got to stay 6 feet apart. So I think the messages are completely inconsistent, and that doesn't help their own goal of trying to get as many people vaccinated as possible.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the book, The 60% Solution, Rethinking Healthcare. Are we learning any lessons from COVID-19 that's going to reshape how healthcare goes from here on out?
Well, to some extent, we're learning lessons that at least an old guy like me learned when his mom would yell at him, right? So my mom would fuss with me. She said, get outside and play. Eat your vegetables. Go to bed early, right? So in other words, eat right, sleep right, and get some exercise. The CDC studies have said, hey, you know what? If you eat right, sleep right, and get some exercise, you're likely to have less of an effect from COVID. If you're also less likely to be obese. So some of these messages we're getting from, and I talk about this in my book about the importance of primary care and having what I call a longitudinal relationship with your primary care physician, is getting back to basics. But the other thing is we've got to really learn how to be proactive in managing our own health and take personal responsibility for it. I know that's in parts of this country a very unpleasant message to hear, but you got to take personal responsibility and be personally accountable for the risks you're taking.
Yeah, I got to tell you, one of the things that I've actually learned to love coming out of this is having a meeting with your doctor via Zoom, a Zoom meeting that did not go in person. I think that is going to radically change healthcare going forward. What about you? As far as is physicians' willingness to meet with you online versus having you drag you into the office, and I think that can be ever that much more efficient in seeing patients.
Well, Jimmy, you're spot on, and here's the problem. It's not been the doctors who don't want to do it. It's been the insurance companies who don't want to pay for it because the insurance companies believe it's rich for fraud. But the other issue is if you're sitting in Houston and your doctor is sitting in New Orleans, then what state does the doctor have to be licensed in?
Yeah, that's a good point.
In other words, we're still stuck on this agrarian model. And I got news for you. Your biology and chemistry didn't change when you went across the state line.
True enough.
We're still people. We're all humans. And so the idea, in my view, the idea of state licensing of physicians and nurses is really an antiquated idea. And what President Trump did when he issued the executive order allowing and mandating, in some instances, the use of telehealth and telemedicine was really freeing, but the insurance companies have already signaled, hey, they're going to stop this as soon as they can.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be interesting. I think there's a lot of revolutionary things that are coming out of COVID-19, and ultimately I think we'll be better served for it. I think maybe we'll come up with a business model that runs a little bit better for hospitals and for physicians and for patients too.
I certainly hope so. And I think, we have to really give credit to the advancement of the technology that goes into these vaccinations, the fact that it was developed so quickly, the fact that it can be used for other viruses is going to be important, and for other healthcare issues is going to be important. But the business models are one. I'd love to talk to you at length about that sometime because that's a really thorny problem. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that I'm really stuck up on right now is the fact that insurance companies are now buying physician practices. United Healthcare now they employ over 50,000 physicians. So when you go to the doctor, who are you seeing? Are you seeing your doctor or are you seeing the insurance company? Wow. And where do the profits go that result as a result of the elimination of overhead and profitability for those clinical physicians? Does that go back into the pockets of the premium payer or to the employer, or does it go to United? The answer is it goes to United.
Yeah.
United made over $6 billion in the second quarter alone last year.
Okay. You know what? We'll have to get you back and cover that in more detail. But thanks for joining me today, Todd. Good to talk to you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, Jimmy. I appreciate it.